Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Nina Rubin. I am a coactive coach. I live in San Diego, California. And I thought today we would talk a little bit about coaching, what's the difference between coaching and therapy. I used to be a therapist. And talk about why somebody might see a coach versus seeing a therapist. What do you think about that today?
Nina, I think that sounds perfect. And I know that over here at Wellmarket, we get lots of inquiries from people wanting to understand the difference between coaching and therapy and which approach might be most beneficial for them at that time. And also the fact that they can be complementary therapy. So I'm really excited to have you on the program today. A little bit more about Nina. Nina started coaching in 2014 and she trained with the Coactive Training Institute. And she also is certified by the Center for Somatic Studies in New York. She has a master's degree in clinical psychology and has practiced as a marriage and family therapist. So thanks, Nina. I know the listeners can't see you, but you look bright and sunny today, really reflecting that San Diego vibe. And so lovely to see you and lovely to see your shining personality. Thanks for
Thank
being
you so
here.
much. Thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
a very nice and generous way to introduce me. Thank you.
So Nina, I know in our previous conversation, we talked a little bit about your path to coaching, coming from a clinical psychology background where you've done marriage and family therapy. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with that modality and your training and what led you to coaching?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it started when in my early 20s, I was suffering sadness from a breakup, and I just didn't know who to be and really how to be. So I talked to some people and I thought maybe I need to see a therapist. And I got some different referrals, and they were all the therapists that I was talking to were so expensive. And I asked them, "Do you either offer a sliding scale or can you refer me to somebody who does?" Because I didn't make a lot of money at the time and my insurance didn't cover. I don't even know if I had insurance actually. And so I found a therapist. So two different people pointed me to the therapist I chose, who turned out to be a Gestalt therapist.
Mm,
Gestalt therapy is a modality of therapy that focuses on the here and now and the present. And I found that to be helpful, but it was also the most interesting to me because there are features of Gestalt therapy that incorporate existentialism, things like responsibility, freedom, death, choice. Those are questions that I always inquire about for myself. And so when I
mm.
was seeing my therapist, I couldn't get enough. And so we were having like these really interesting conversations about my breakup and what I was going to do with, quote, the rest of my life. And I kept asking her, "Do you have more articles that I can read about what we're doing?" And so she said, "Well, this is what I do. I do Gestalt therapy." And sure. So I started reading these articles. And then I thought, I was feeling great after the breakup. I was no longer suffering. And we started talking about what was I going to do for a career? Because at the time, I think I worked in promotional marketing and it was fun. But actually, I worked in promotional marketing and then I worked at a fashion company. And both were fun, but I didn't
Okay.
feel, yeah, but I didn't know that they were fulfilling.
Right.
So my therapist actually, like, I felt like she crowned me one day and she said, "Would you ever consider being a therapist? You're so good at talking to people and listening, and you have a genuine curiosity." And I said, "Oh my goodness, that's so touching that you would even offer that suggestion to me." And so I took a psychology class, a graduate school psychology class, thinking, is this something I would want to do? Because I'd never taken psychology before. And so
Okay.
I liked the class. And then I applied and enrolled in a master's program. And in my program, I also decided to take more Gestalt classes. So I took classes, and then there was also a Gestalt Institute in LA. I lived in LA at the time. And I started taking many classes for the next 7 years in Gestalt therapy. And I was just obsessed with Gestalt, and I still love Gestalt. So Gestalt, like I was saying, is a focus on the here and now and the present. And the big thing for me with Gestalt therapy is the relational aspect. So how are you and I connecting? Where are our ebbs and where are our flows? And how can we make a smoother transition between them? Because we're not always going to be
Ah,
connected. So we're not always going to be like gazing into each other's eyes and feeling like deep love, but we might need a little pause just like the ocean, like comes the sea comes in and out to the sand. And so I found that to be really interesting. And then I also, as part of my training, went to New York and did the somatic experiencing. And so that was basically Gestalt from a movement perspective. So we
Oh,
learned about,
wow.
yeah, it was great.
Fascinating.
So we learned about where do you hold stress, so here's another example. Maybe you're talking to somebody and sometimes somebody might stand over you and maybe wag their finger at you. And that could make you feel like you're being lectured. And that person might not
Right.
know that they're lecturing, but that's the feeling you get. So there are different body positions that we can put ourselves in to that feel better or worse for us. And so I learned about that for the next 2 years. That's just a small tip of the iceberg, but we learned a ton. And then I worked at different therapy sites. I worked at a community health agency, and I worked for a foster care agency with foster kids and things like foster kids,
Oh, very challenging.
reunification, very hard. And then I had a private practice, and in my private practice, my therapist, my supervisor, she was not my therapist, kept saying things like, Nina, you're doing way too much coaching. You need to do more therapy. And I was like, but this is how I do therapy. And she was like, well, you're not doing it.
Oh
And
my
I was trying,
gosh.
and I kept trying to be more like her. And then I would feel robotic, and my clients would always, I just felt like we weren't connecting because I was so stiff because I was trying to be her. And
Mm-hmm.
she's a talented therapist, but she's not me and I'm not her. And so at this point, I reached a breaking point. It would have been like 7 or 8 years of being being a therapist. And I thought, I don't really feel like I'm making great headway. Like, this isn't going that well. I don't feel like I can be me. And so I decided to change my practice to from a therapy practice to a coaching practice. So I took
Okay.
some coaching classes. I hadn't taken CTI at that point yet, but I started taking some coaching classes and learning about converting my practice, and everything just felt much better, felt right. And I started to trust that I knew myself better. I didn't need to be somebody else to have an impact. I could be me and have an impact, a better impact, a stronger impact, and a more enduring one. So
Mm-hmm.
I started taking classes just here and there. Like, I took a class on thinking and like letting your client think during session. So having more silence. And I took classes on growing my business and enrolling clients, things like that. And then about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I thought, I want to get certified. So I researched a bunch of different coaching schools, and I came across CTI, Coactive Training Institute, and enrolled and recently passed my certification. And here we are
Congrats.
now. Thanks.
Perfect.
Long-winded.
Yeah, but definitely one that provides a lot of context for the listeners. And I really am blown away by how your training in Gestalt therapy provides this incredible foundation for your coaching practice and all of the skill sets that you learn through Coactive Training Institute. You're able to lay this upon a very strong foundation in therapeutic practice. Can you tell us a little bit about how coaching differentiates from therapy? You did mention that your supervisor kept coming back and saying you're doing more coaching and not therapy, but for people who maybe don't know both sides as well, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, definitely. So I think that coaching is finding out how, and therapy is finding out why. So
Ah,
oftentimes in therapy, we're looking at, why did this happen to me? Why am I like this? What am I doing wrong? I need to talk to somebody. I'm stuck and I don't know how to get out of this. And why am I like this? And I keep repeating these patterns. And I think there's a mindset of going to therapy that's different from a mindset of going to coaching. So
okay.
looking at, therapy, not always, but often has more historical legs. So we're looking at your generational patterns. You're looking at how you were treated as a kid with your parents, or difficult things that have happened. And that might happen a little bit in coaching, but I don't think that's the focus. So in
Mm-hmm.
coaching, I think Actually, one other thing about therapy is I think we're looking for greater awareness, deepening awareness. So through awareness, you will eventually lead to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that therapy is often a longer term solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so so sometimes people are in therapy with the same therapist for many, many years, and it's a wonderful relationship, and you feel safe. Ideally, if you have the right therapist, you're going to feel safe and seen and heard, and you're going to have some awareness about why this happened or why you are you.
Right.
So then let's say you have graduated from therapy, and then you have all this awareness, or you don't want to have therapy. That's also okay. You might decide to see a coach. So what are you doing in coaching? Well, coaching is the what and the how. So
Okay.
so I think of coaching as, you know that you are stuck at work, and instead of thinking about how long your parents also were stuck in their jobs, you might think, I don't want to be stuck here anymore. I'm going to find solutions for how. So we don't know exactly like what the next step will be in my career, but we know that this isn't working, and let's get the ball rolling, and let's get on that trajectory to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think of
Mm-hmm.
coaching as more solution focused with a when you have a great coach, you have a great cheerleader by your side. So you have somebody,
Absolutely.
don't you think?
Absolutely, yes.
So, like, I would imagine that when you've had a great coach, you feel like you can do anything, and almost any idea is a viable one.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
very empowering.
yeah, and so I think that's a big difference between coaching and therapy. And I think that having the alliance with your coach or a therapist, either way, is going to lead to great growth for a person.
And
I don't
Nina,
want to knock therapy.
no, no, absolutely not. And it's definitely appropriate for people depending on what they're experiencing and can
Right.
complement
Definitely.
coaching, or you can graduate from therapy and go to coaching. There's a whole number of different ways to approach it. But I was curious if we can go back to that example you gave, that great example of being stuck at work, knowing that it's not the place for you, and getting to the point where you are exploring how do you move on. Now, as a coach, what are some of your favorite tools to use to prompt a client around how, or to explore that situation?
So I might ask my client, not just what's your end goal, because they're going to say, I don't know, because that's why I'm stuck. So instead, I
Mm,
might say, how do you want to feel in your new job? How do you want your day to be structured, and how do you want to feel? And they would say, well, I'd like to get up and have my coffee and then go to work, whether that be working from home or working from an office. And I'd like to be able to not feel so rushed, let's say.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So you want to have some flexibility on your time, and you still want to get your job done, maybe. I mean, you still want to get your job done, but you maybe want some more autonomy. Yes. Okay. So then we would talk about, when have you felt autonomy at work, and also when have you felt autonomy not at work? Like, when have you felt empowered in your life? And
Hmm.
maybe the client would say, oh, I felt really great was um, when I was looking for jobs, and I really felt motivated, and I got my offer. I felt really good, but then things really shifted during COVID, for example, and I never had a break, and I never got to leave my computer, and my workload just ramped up. Okay, so it's not maybe this job, it's maybe the circumstances right now. Yes. So we might talk about the circumstances that are surrounding your current life, like with regard to a pandemic, or feeling like the job market isn't where you want it to be. So so maybe the stuckness that you're feeling at work might be a result of, you might want to leave the job, but maybe there are other things to do to keep this job in the meantime. Or
Hmm.
maybe so there's lots of different things. Or maybe you have been furloughed or laid off. So what next? So we would be
Hmm.
talking about the financial aspect too. How much do you need to make to live?
Hmm.
That's an important question. We would be talking about, I would like to, when I work with clients on this type of question, or really many questions, how do you want to feel later? When you're having like a really good work day, let's talk about that, how that feels, and what you're doing, what has happened, and then how you celebrate that day. And then how can we have more of those days occur in your situation when you get a new job or in your current job?
Yeah. And I love that framing, because right from the outset, you're shifting the client into what's possible within
Hmm.
the realm of positivity, right? So you're getting them to taste that emotion, taste what they want, and then creatively work on solutions towards getting there. And
Right.
just that insight that happens when we're in a positive mindset is extraordinary. So I really love how you laid that out for the listeners, and I think it's incredible. And I've experienced it myself in coaching sessions. Just when you go in and you're really troubled by something, feeling stuck or overwhelmed or annoyed, you don't see the possibilities. But sometimes it just takes a coach holding up a mirror and asking you, well, how do you want to feel? Get into that space, and then
Hmm.
let's talk about how to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you.
So I was curious, Nina, as well. I know that in your career, combining coaching and therapy and doing one and then the other, you've also worked with employee assistance plans
Hmm.
previously, before becoming certified as a coactive coach. What did you notice in what you did for EAP programs versus what you're able to do now with your consistent coach-client relationships? What stands out to you the most?
I would say the biggest thing that stands out is building a relationship. So when I took calls for the EAP, so actually, let me give you a little bit of background. Some people might not know what EAP is. So EAP
Sure.
is Employee Assistance Program, and many companies, big or small, offer an ancillary benefit program where their employees can get not just medical insurance and not just go to see an MD for a physical or whatever, but they can also get therapy. And maybe your company will cover anywhere from 3 to 10 sessions free. So what the employee does is they call the EAP phone number, and then they request an authorization code, and then they find a therapist who's in network, and they go to therapy. So taking the calls means that but here's the thing that's difficult as the EAP specialist. I hear a lot of sad stories every day, because that's where people are. So usually people start the EAP when they've done anything else that they could think of. So they've
Uh,
like maybe talked to a friend, or maybe they have had nobody to talk to, but they've been sitting with some kind of difficult feeling, whether that be suicidal ideation or depression or anxiety or divorce or any number of things. And whatever they're doing is not working. So they reach the end of their line, and they pick up the phone and they call EAP. So I listen when I had that job, I would listen and we would create strategies, and then I would give them an authorization and then send them on their way to call a therapist and start their own therapy. But the thing that was difficult for me on that job is I never got to build a relationship. And that's the best part of coaching and therapy for me, is having an ongoing relationship with a person and seeing their growth. So somebody might come in feeling despondent or sad or stuck, but I never get to see how and in coaching, I get to see how it turns out, because I get to
mhm.
be part of the process and part of the solution. In EAP, I hear this sad story, and the person and I might connect, but we never get to talk again. And so, countless times when I worked at EAP, people would say to me, "Can I just talk to you?" And I would say,
Oh,
unfortunately, I mean, I would love that, but it doesn't work like that." And so, because here we've had this like hour-long, very deep emotional connection, and it
mhm.
won't go further.
Yeah.
There were in the 2 years I did that job, I took over, oh my, well, in 1 year, I kept a log of all of my calls. I had
Mhm.
well over 3,500 calls.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
3,500 times one time with each person.
yes.
Yeah, wow.
And so out of all of those calls, maybe I can count maybe 3 to 5 times that I talked to one person more than once. And that was, one lady called me a couple times because she liked me, and she kept requesting to talk to me, which was lovely. I loved that, but that's
Mhm.
not common. Most people don't need to
Right.
call back. And so I never got to hear how things unraveled and how things got better for her, most people.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
that's really tough to, like from my perspective, I really grow to like somebody in even 1 hour or 40 minutes or 20 minutes. And then I never get to know how something went, how they saw the light of, and how they grew and how their day improved. I never knew.
Yeah, that is tough. And when you think about it from the perspective of the client as well, that's enormously difficult. So you're saying that most of the time people wait until they've exhausted other ways that they've attempted to deal with their problem or their stress or
Right. So
their
some
mental
people are
health.
calling,
And
yeah.
yeah,
So
and then
people
they're,
are like drinking, and then they finally are like,
oh,
so people, I mean, that drinking alcohol is a coping strategy for many.
hmm,
So they're calling at the end and thinking, I've reached some kind of rock bottom. I don't want to lose my house, or I don't want to lose my job, or I don't want to lose my spouse. So I'm going to call EAP. And then they like tell me everything, and then they're feeling really sad or really stuck or whatever. And we have this great connection. And then they don't get to tell me, they don't even get to report back to me, by the way, this is what happened, or this is
yeah,
what's happening. And so it's a very emotional place to it's a big deal to call EAP, because you're talking to a stranger over the phone, not seeing their face. And
right.
then for me as the respondent on the phone call, I don't get to we don't have a follow-up. So I would say that's something interesting. But I will say that because I did that job and I did so many calls, all of the counselors and specialists on the phones take so many calls. I wasn't alone, but we all, I would say, are really, really good at building rapport quickly over the phone,
Hmm, hmm,
because
hmm.
we don't have cues. Like we're not in person with somebody. We don't have visual cues. We're not taking a walk together or something. And so I would say that really helped me build rapport and listen so deeply. And that's so I would say that my skills have improved as a result of that job.
Yeah, excellent. And I think that's really valuable for people to hear that given your experience, you're able to have that quick level to trust and confidence and rapport to establish the foundation of a strong relationship. I'm really wanting to understand a little bit more about what is possible in the client coach relationship. So, when you do have the ability to have a consistent program with a coach, you're not just relegated to one or two sessions after you've exhausted other opportunities. What happens when people arrive at coaching before maybe things hit rock bottom? What's possible for these clients?
So I think that's a great point, Lily. Most people come to coaching before they've hit rock bottom. Most people think, I don't want something worse to happen. I want to go now. I don't want to have to dig myself out of a hole. I want to pull myself up rather than dig myself out. And
Yeah.
so I think what you just said is really important. So I think this is going to sound real corny, I think, but anything's possible. But I really do think that most things are going to be possible. And it doesn't mean, so when you work with like an excellent coach, if you have this goal of making more money, I don't think that the key is that I think that we would look at your values and think, okay, so you have a value in financial freedom and flexibility with your money and being able to do certain things. So we're not looking at just the bank account. And the person might say, no, I want X amount of dollars in my bank account. Okay, so I get that, and I want you to have X
Mhm.
amount of dollars in your bank account. And what will this dollar symbol mean? Well, it might mean that I have worked really hard and I'm proud of myself. And it might mean that I can buy or save what I've been dreaming of. It might be something I've never had before and my family never had. And so we're looking at truly anything being possible. Now, finding how long is anything possible? Well, now having that certain amount of money in your bank account might not be overnight. Probably won't be. I wish it was, but
Yeah.
I want that too. But I think that when you have like the right coach and the right connection with your coach, and by right, I mean when you feel like you can be yourself, you can giggle, you can be light in your sessions, you feel like you're growing and working together, when you feel complementary with each other, then
Mhm.
I think that you can achieve things, and it might be incremental. It probably won't be like giant leaps. It might be smaller steps. And those small steps are a lot, that's still so much growth. And an excellent coach will be able to point out, look, you've come from here and now you're here. And it's not just evidenced by your bank account, although that's evidence too. It's evidenced by how you hold yourself, how you think about yourself, that other things are opening up for you as we've been working together, because you've been different. You've been doing your work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are so many powerful tidbits that you've just expressed there, and I wanted to sort of bring attention to the fact that there's this element of unlocking intrinsic motivation. So
Mm-hmm.
it comes from the client, the coach helps bring it out into awareness. And then once it's held in the relationship and there's awareness on both sides around it, the coach helps keep you accountable and
Mm-hmm.
helps you see your growth. Because so often, especially during the lives we live today, constant stress, constant distraction, we're not even aware. It may not be apparent that we've grown tremendously in a couple of months if when we're just working ourselves to the bone and then maybe decompressing with TV or something like that,
Right.
right? So having that intentional time and having that awareness around your values and your goals is such a gift. A
I
gift that
think
more people need.
I think you're right. And actually, one other thing I wanted to say that piggybacks on what you're saying is when you have an excellent coach and you ask like what's possible, and I said anything, I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons also things become more possible is because you can brainstorm, and you can brainstorm with somebody who's not going to be a naysayer and be like, well, that's never going to work. You're going to
Yeah.
brainstorm with some you're brainstorming with somebody and you're thinking of your wildest ideas that might be really silly, but maybe they're not so silly, because when you find something that works, it'll work. It just works. You can make
Mm-hmm.
things work, and your crazy idea is probably just what's needed.
Yeah, that's a really cool point, and I love the idea of brainstorming together and having someone who is supportive. And I mean, nobody really wants to brainstorm with Oscar the Grouch or
Right.
you know the judge that sits in their brain saying, "Oh, that's a terrible idea. You could never do it."
Right.
We need to be inspired and supported, and I think that's an enormously transformative element of coaching, that
I think
support
so.
and that inspiration. So can you tell us a little bit more about what types of clients you most like working with, and what that's like for you? Yeah.
Yeah. So I like working with, lately I've actually been working with a lot of men who are doing pretty well in their careers, and they are wanting to still level up. So lately that's
Okay.
been a lot of my client base. I really love working with teenagers. I think they're really fun. I have
Neat.
some clients now, but one young man just graduated high school, and we've been really talking a lot about he's planning to go to college, but now with COVID everything happening, he's actually decided to take a gap year, and we're working on structuring this next year so that it's not wasteful and he's not playing video games all day. Instead, we're working on him like really changing some of his habits with procrastination, with like motivation. And so he's such an awesome person. I love working with him. And I also work with other younger teenagers, and we've been talking with a lot of our work has been around how to still learn while at home and not be so distracted with siblings or chores. Because just like adults are facing being home constantly, kids are too. And it's lonely for kids who usually play with their friends at school every day, or like have interactions. And so I'm really loving working with teenagers. I love that population. I love working with people with a big idea or a small idea who want to make their idea bigger, and working with I guess I would call them, I guess, quarter life women or millennial
Mm.
women is really fun. I like
Hmm.
that population too. So I like working with lots of people. So
Yeah, no,
I would say
and
three main categories that people tend to like who like me, and I don't want to say I like them. I mean, I do like them, but this tends to be the demographics or the people that gravitate towards me and me towards the most.
Very rewarding territory. And I mean, since
Oh,
we
actually, one more thing.
are
I wanted to say one
sure.
other thing. Because of my therapy background, I like also working with couples because I think so. Actually, I have strong opinions on this. So I'm gonna try not to be too opinionated, but speak from the heart rather than the head. So I think couples coaching is different from couples therapy, and one of the reasons some of my couples come in to see me is that they want to not just talk about why their relationship is failing, but they need homework and they need in the moment structure. And so that's something we do. And so when I work with couples, we have sessions and we'll say, when this is specifically happening, because this is a fight that happens a lot, then this is what you literally need to do these things in this order, and it works.
It's
And
so
so
practical.
very
Yeah.
practical, very practical, because that's something I noticed when I was a couples therapist, is it wasn't very practical and people weren't having very good results. And so when I started coaching and and I learned more, and I changed my philosophy on this, things opened up for the couple.
Yeah.
So that was huge. So one of the other things I do for my couples is, if they're in the middle of a fight, they can text me and be like, what should I literally do right now? And
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, because I don't
Yes.
want this to linger for like 1 or 2 or 3 weeks. That's too long, and it's too uncomfortable, and there's so much anxiety for the people. So I always say, if you're in this fight in that moment, text me and just say, like, we need to get on a call like tomorrow, and we'll do like a quick check-in, and then I'd like to give you, like, let's review what you already have done, and see where this can go better. Not what we don't need to really review what went wrong. Let's review where it can go better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, there's just so many good things about that particular style of working together, the practicality and just being available in that way. That's tremendously generous, but it also gives the clients an opportunity to pause and say, oh, we are fighting. Oh, we we want a solution, and let's debrief this. Let's
Right,
get in a session to talk about where we can go that's right versus what went wrong 3 weeks ago, and have that
right,
time to stew in it. So that is
right.
exceptional. I really wanted to bring it back around to teens for just a moment. And maybe this is a little selfish, but I know a lot of people are in the same boat as I am. I'm the mother of a 16-year-old daughter who's going to be starting her junior year in high school online, like so many other parents. And I really see that coaching is an underutilized resource when it comes to teen well-being. And now, maybe more so than ever, I think our teens, our kids need additional support in a way that is positive and focused and gets them prepared for what's next. So I was really delighted to hear you bring up that you like working with teens, and that this is a space. I think a lot of parents haven't considered coaching for their adolescent kids.
I
Yeah.
think I know that that's true. I hear I hear a lot of of concern from parents of their teenage children, because the kids have, especially in COVID, and like, so kids have, like, they're by their computers all day, and then it's
Mm.
hard for kids to now go outside, because the kids, for some reason, I think the kids don't feel motivated to go outside on their own. And so so parents are trying to, like, bribe their kids. And so I talked to one lady who said she was going to start putting her kids snacks outside. So the kids, we were joking that it was like, oh, like,
Like
just walking.
trapping wild animals, the opposite, right? Like, go outside. There's a bag of chips out there.
Exactly. So So I remember one lady saying, like, being creative and thinking, I think I need to, like, have a pizza party outside to get my kids outside. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. So then maybe
Yeah.
but the point is, I think a lot of times parents and schools tell the parents, oh, well, your kid needs to see a therapist, and you can see the school psychologist, which is great, but for a lot of kids, that feels like they're in trouble.
Yeah.
It feel like the kid feels like they're being taken out of class, or like everybody knows that they're going to then have an appointment or a session in the middle of the school day or after school with the therapist at school. So it doesn't feel as private. And sometimes kids feel ashamed, or they feel concerned that their friends are going to judge, even though the friend is probably having the same thing. But there's a lot of stigma for kids. And also the other thing is, a lot of parents use therapy for their kids as a punishment. Whereas,
Oh, oh,
right, like
that's awful.
if you do this, then I'm going to have to take you to, so you keep getting in fights with your sibling. Now you're going to have to see a therapist. And so the kid thinks of it as,
Perpetuates the stigma.
exactly. So the
Yeah.
kid thinks of it as they're the problem child. Why can't they just get it right? When really they just need to talk to somebody. And the other aspect of this is, I've talked to a lot of parents and I've said, so I'm glad that you're calling for therapy for your child. Do you want some therapy? Oh, no, I'm fine. And so when a parent won't seek help for him or herself, they're creating, the kid thinks that they're problematic. And then, so it's not exactly mirrored at home. Whereas coaching, a lot of kids and adults have had a coach in their life, whether maybe that's in sports. So coaching, the word coaching alone makes kids feel at ease, just to begin. And so I think it is, like you're saying, an underutilized resource for parents, and kids rather. And a lot of
Yeah.
kids don't know to ask for it. Kids don't, it's not really utilized in schools, unfortunately. And so kids can't come home saying, Mom, I want to get a coach. So kids might come home and say, I want to talk to somebody. And the only person the parent knows to take them to is the school, or a school therapist or school psychologist. And then the kid doesn't really like that. So sometimes those relationships are great and they're important, but sometimes kids want more solutions and to think differently and to be able to have big ideas. And in therapy, we're like we talked about, oftentimes we think about the why, not the what and how, or next,
Right.
what's next.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's incredibly important context. And another aspect to consider as well is, how do we support kids before ultimately things get to a point where their mental health is compromised? So coaching can come in earlier on, way earlier on. And
Definitely.
yeah, so
There are certain things that people face where therapy is definitely more appropriate. Or
absolutely.
and some of those things might be severe eating disorders, suicidal ideation, that's big. And a person can still be in coaching while going through the other things, but I think therapy is really important for people who have mental illness, or who really, really, really are have had a strong history of various and similar problems. Maybe
Yes.
therapy is a better next choice.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, because I think it's important for people to really understand, okay, if you are experiencing something to this severity, or this set of symptoms, or mental health issues, please go see a therapist. So that's very helpful clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in closing then, I think it would be great to just maybe bring it back around to the people in the workforce that you're working with right now. So you mentioned men who are doing pretty well, who want to level up, and you also mentioned millennial women. So I'm curious, with your current clients and your current prospective clients, what you're seeing as being kind of the big issues right now when we're in a remote workforce and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Balance.
Balance.
Balance is huge, because so I think a lot of people feel like they're growing and doing pretty well at work, but they're not having time away from their computers.
Yeah.
And
Tell me
and
about it.
right, we're on one right now. But I think the other aspect of this that's huge is, because of the uncertainty of the pandemic and like the spread of COVID, people are nervous to go outside. And I think, I think there's a lot of people who might otherwise spend more time outside, but they are feeling nervous about catching germs, catching the COVID. So I think that anything I want my clients and my prospective clients to be able to find a way to actually like turn off their computers and turn off their phones for a moment, and like, because a lot of times you're stopping work, but then you're still scrolling mindlessly on Facebook or Instagram or making a TikTok, which is fun, but it's still kind of the same thing. So your break doesn't really feel like a break. And the other thing is, with so many things have been canceled recently, like concerts or amusement parks or other things that people like doing to unwind. So there's not feeling like there's a lot of hope for what to do. Like, there's not a lot to look. It feels like people don't have a lot to look forward to. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that if we change the mindset and think of, I have myself to look forward to. This is a really good time to work on myself. This is a really good time to connect deeper with the individuals I know, because it is hard to meet new people right now.
Yeah.
It's a fact. It's kind of hard to meet new people, but the relationships that I do have, I can really work on those. I can like get closer to people. And so I think thinking about not just what we've lost, but what we can gain is something that has been working well with my clients and prospective clients. Also, so I have a talk with a former client. She's done so well. I love this woman. She's done so well in her career, and she now manages a pretty big a marketing team. And we're having a conversation in a few days about working with her team. So so she feels like there's some of the younger members on her team need some help with professionalism. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to be talking about what does that look like, what's her perspective, and then if and when I work with her team, how do they understand professionalism, but also how do they understand their roles, and how do they climb up in their roles? Because most people, when they have a job, don't want to stay in their same position forever. They want to be able to have upward mobility. And so how can we get you there, either at this company or the next company? So
Mm-hmm.
let's you do your best so that you can keep getting raises at this job, and then when you're ready to leave, how can you get to the next pay structure and the next responsibility structure? That's important to think about. So that's something I like to work on with my clients, and that's I think what clients like to work on with me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it was a wonderful overview of differentiating coaching from therapy, understanding how they complement one another, understanding what might be appropriate for you, and a great survey of what different clients can benefit from in a coaching client relationship. So, Nina, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you
Oh, thank
today.
you, Lily. This has been such a
Yeah.
nice time for me as well. I love it.
Wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.